molecules on the left half of the box, and there is a partition. Right half of the box is empty. And in figure B, this partition is lifted, as you can see. And at that moment, at t equal to 0, when partition is lifted, all the gas is on left hand side of the box. Right? Uh, so that's your starting point. And the next, you can see some molecules have managed to reach right side of the box. And if you wait for a long enough time, common sense says that the entire box will get filled with gas molecules, okay, uniformly. Are you all able to see gas molecules clearly? Can
Yes,
somebody
sir.
answer it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. So you can see that from left half, some of them entered the right half, and then eventually they've spread. And this is what is our common sense expectation also. That's what happens normally. Should happen also. So if I have kept track of number of gas molecules on the left half of the box at t equal to 0, they were all on the left side. So number of molecule was n. As you can see here, let me just use my yes. So all the gas molecules were on the left half, and after you lifted the partition, slowly, number of molecules on the left decreased. Of course, equivalently, if you plot the right one, they would increase, and eventually would settle for almost half of the molecules on the left side. Other half would have migrated to right side. But you can see this zigzag pattern. So the because of the random motion of gas molecules, number of molecule keeps on fluctuating. The time in which this happens, the time it takes for all the uh, uh, right half and left half to have the equal density is called relaxation time. We are not going to do much with relaxation time, just to have an idea. So suppose this is what we wanted to understand. So last time we have already discussed this. We start with 4 molecules and see what are the possibilities, how these molecules bounce back and forth and arrange themselves in the box, hypothetically left half and right half. Then you know that if you have 16 possibility, of course the picture shows you 15 possibilities. But if you have 16 possibilities, then you have either left half completely empty, or it can have 1 molecule or 2 or 3 or 4, and then you can see that the most likely you are going to see 2 molecules on the left and 2 on the right. 6 out of 16 possibilities. Instead, if I had 40 molecules, and if I look at the number of possibilities which favors number of molecules on the left and number of molecules on the right, then uh, n would vary from 0 to 40. So I'm not showing you the entire table. The number of favorable cases would be 40 Cn, and probability of having n molecules on the left side will be 40 Cn divided by 2 raised to n. So if I look at the probability of half of them on the left and half of them on the right, then 40 C20 is 10 raised to 11, and 2 raised to 40 is 10 raised to 12. And that means there is a 12%, 12.5% probability that half of them are going to be on the left and half of them are going to be on the right. It would be interesting to see what happens if you go to 19 and 21 molecules combination, or 18 and 20. But I'm showing you calculation for 15 and 25. So one half 15, the other half 25. That probability is 20, which means as you go off half distribution, the probability falls very rapidly. So 12.5% is a very high probability compared to any other possibilities. So if you take, let's say, 2 raised to 40 possibilities, okay, hypothetically you say I take 2 raised to 40 boxes, each box representing one of the possibility, 1 molecule on the left 39 on the right, 2 on the left, 38 on the right. But when I say 1 on the left, there will be 40 possibilities because out of 40, any one could be on the left. So like that, you have so many. And then now at random, if you choose any of this box, you will end up finding that 12.5% of the time you will get 10 on 20 on the left, 20 on the right. 1822 or 1921 would not be much different, but they will still be less than 12.5%. And these 4 or 5 molecules difference will almost occupy entire probability spectrum. We'll see that. Let's see. If I have 4 molecules, the way they get distributed randomly is shown in the figure. Uh, so if the system keeps on evolving after 30 steps, you would see the way number of molecules on the left half keep on fluctuating. Okay, so maybe even if you have 2 and 2, because they keep on bouncing back and forth, sometimes they will have 4, sometimes they will have 0, and so on fluctuation. Uh, this is, of course, the fractional one. So you can see fraction when it becomes 4 on the left half, the fraction of molecules on the left half is sorry, all 4 on the left half, fraction will be 1, and when there are 2 and 2, fraction will be half. So that's the kind of situation you would see. Now, if you have 40 molecules, you can see that fraction which was readily jumping to 1 in case of 4 is not anyway going to 1. Okay, it just keeps on oscillating around half. So when you go for a very large number of molecules, the probability of having um, almost all of them on one half or just 1 or 2 on one half is very, very small. So if you have a very large n, that's the kind of situation. See, you see in the previous graph, you have seen the same fluctuation n upon n, and you see this for a very large n. Okay, so here the fluctuation remains very close to half n. Now, when you take gas molecules within a gas move very randomly. Okay, so that's the photograph reproduced with courtesy of this J. Perrin publication of in Atoms. Okay, it shows particle size of 10 raised to minus 4 centimeter, which is like 100 micron, uh, and the width almost 50 times more, and height of this box which we have taken is 75 times more. So 50 times and 75 times size of the molecule. So it can bounce back and forth, back and forth. It can collide with each other and will keep on moving in zigzag path. Now, this is the kind of motion that we are interested in studying. Unfortunately, if you want to jump to 2 dimensions, things are going to be more difficult. So to start with, we will do this as a random walk problem in 1 dimension. Let's first see some of the statistics of Brownian motion. So if you take 1 mole of a gas, it occupies at NTP 22.4 liters, normal temperature and pressure, which is pressure is atmospheric pressure and temperature is 0 degrees Celsius. If you take atomic size of the order of 1 angstrom, 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter, you can actually calculate this n. Sigma is of course the area. When the 2 atoms come close together, the interaction region area is pi r 0 square. And mean free path, we are not going into the maths or derivation, will be 1 by 4 n sigma. That n value is number of molecules per unit volume. So you have 22.4 liters and number of molecules are equal to Avogadro's number. So you can take 6 into 10 raised to 23 divided by 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3. Okay, so it will be what, about 1/3 into 10 raised to 26. So that will be about 3 into 10 raised to 25. So your n number density is about 3 into 10 raised to 25 molecules per meter cube. And that will give you mean free path of 10 raised to minus 7 meter. See this 10 raised to minus 7 meter. Uh, if you take this as 10 raised to minus 10 meter, minus 8 centimeter is 10 raised to minus 10 meters. This is almost 1,000 times more than the size of the molecule. Remember what we took in the diagram. That was 50 or 75 times larger area. Okay. And therefore, actually speaking, it should have moved straight line from one end to the other end. So we don't know what they were talking about. We are just talking about atoms. Those was probably the suspended pollen grains they were describing. They are slightly bigger. So now at 300 Kelvin, this is at about room temperature, 27 degrees Celsius. The average kinetic energy of gas molecule is 3 by 2 kT, which turns out to be 0.025 electron volt. If you want, it's about 1 by 40 of an electron volt. RMS speed of these gas molecules at 300 Kelvin would be 516 meters per second. We are talking about air molecules, which air is consisting 78% of nitrogen. So we are taking nitrogen molecule. Okay, and nitrogen molecules at room temperature would have a speed of around 500 meters per second. These are, of course, non-relativistic speed, so we don't need to worry about relativistic mechanics. And if you see, the mean free path is the time it takes to travel distance between mean free path is the distance traveled between two collisions, average distance traveled between two successive collisions. Then it would take around 10 raised to minus 10 seconds before it collides with another molecule. Now, this is too small a time. Okay, 10 raised to minus 10 seconds compared to our, for us, even 1/10 of a second is our clock ticks every 1 second. So 1/10 of a second is a bit smaller, but still it is a manageable scale. Our eyes and ears respond to 1/10 of a second, whatever happens. Beyond that, it doesn't show distinction between the two events. So 1/10 of a second is a typical human time scale. Now this is 9 orders of magnitude smaller time, which means if you lift partition of the box, the time scale in which the entire box get filled is of the order of this 10 raised to minus 10 seconds. Of course, this is one mean free path. You have to see how big the size of your box is. So you divide that by the velocity. So suppose if your box is, let's say, half a meter and you divide by 500, it's 1 by 2,500, that will be about 4 into 10 raised to minus 3 milliseconds. So in a millisecond time, of course, definitely much smaller than 1/10 of a second, your chamber would be occupying half the gas on the left and half the gas on the right. So far, is it all understandable to everybody what I have been talking, Harshdeep?
Yes, sir.
अभी तक जो बात की आपको समझ में आई?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now onwards, if you want, actually, you can note this down, what is there on the screen. And subsequently, when we talk about random motion, I would like you to write down your notes the way you do it in class as you copy it from the board. So as the equation appears on the screen, you consider it as if I am writing on the board and you are all going to copy. If anybody has any problem, please let me know. But I would expect that you are writing this. And I will ask you whether I can go to the next slide. At that time, if somebody has not completed, should let me know. Otherwise, I will go to the next slide. Uh, okay. If anybody has objections, say I can't expect all 10 or 11 to answer. So if anybody has any difficulty, please speak up. If you do not speak up, I will assume that we are all right with what we are doing. So I'm giving you about a minute. Please note down these numbers. I don't mind if you take little trouble of calculating yourself and verifying the calculation, but that you do later. As of now, you just note down this. So I'll read it out. You can write simultaneously. 1 mole occupies about 22.4 liters at NTP. NTP is 273 Kelvin temperature, which is 0 degrees Celsius, and 1 atmosphere is 1 into 10 raised to 5 Newton per meter. Is Dhaval present?
Oh, sir.
Have you been able to write it down?
Yes, sir.
Shall I go to the next line?
No, sir.
No or yes?
No, no.
No, I'm not talking about slide. I'm talking about line, reading what is on the screen.
Yes, sir.
So for atoms, the typical radius is 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter or 10 raised to minus 10 meter, which is 1 angstrom. We are talking about order of magnitude calculation. Size of an atom is of the order of 10 raised to minus 10 meters. Uh, Sigma, which is the area of the disk when two atoms collide with respect to each other, they would be seeing that if they fall within this area, they will collide. So that's pi r 0 square. And your mean free path will be 1 by 4n sigma. Okay. Why that factor 4? Because when two atoms have to collide, they should be within the distance of 2r0 with respect to each other. Okay, so that 2r0, if you consider the area, it will be pi times 2r0 square. So you get 4 pi r0 square. So that's why 4 sigma. So your mean free path is 1 by 4n sigma, which is about 10 raised to 3 into 10 raised to minus 7 meter. Each of the calculations shown on this slide, I request all of you to please go home and you are already at home. After the class, please sit and check all the calculation and see that you agree with the numbers.
Sir,
Now,
what is N?
sorry,
What is N?
uh, what is in? कहाँ लिखा है?
N. Lambda equal to 1 upon 4 n sigma.
N is number density, number of molecules per unit volume.
Okay.
You will have to calculate. It's not there on the slide, but I tell you, uh, uh, 1 mole is Avogadro's number. So there are 6 into 10 raised to 23 gas molecules. And it occupies 22.4 liters, which is 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3 meter cube. So you divide 6 into 10 raised to 23 by 22.4 into 10 raised to minus 3. You will get a number which is somewhere around 3 to 4 into 10 raised to 25. Your n is about 10 raised to 25. Okay, and your sigma will be of the order of 10 raised to minus 20. And therefore, you will actually, if you take 4n sigma, of course, when I say 10 raised to minus 20 is r0 square, but then you have 4 times pi, which is also a factor of 10. So you'll get around 2 into 10 raised 2.96 into 10 raised to minus 7 meter. Now at 300 Kelvin, the average kinetic energy, which is 3 by 2 kT, if you calculate in joules and then convert it into electron volt, it will turn out to be 0.025 electron volt. Velocity, this is of course RMS velocity, root mean square velocity. Of course, same equation, you can just innovate it for velocity. It will turn out to be root of 3 RT upon MA. MA is Avogadro's number. MA is the molecular weight. If I take nitrogen molecular weight is 28, and if I am working with, if I take R as 8.4 joules per mole per Kelvin, then I can write Ma as 28 for nitrogen. So 3 into 8.4 into 300 divided by 28, whatever is the number, take a square root of that, and you will get 516 meters per second. That's the average RMS speed, not average, RMS speed of nitrogen molecules at room temperature. 300 Kelvin is 27 degrees Celsius. It must be the temperature today, somewhere around that, 26, 27 degrees. Uh, and then, of course, how much time it takes to travel one mean free path with this speed, that time is 10 raised to minus 10 seconds. So we just estimated, suppose if you have about half a meter size box, then the gas molecules from half of the box to fill up the entire box would require about a millisecond to microsecond of time. Uh, Practically not noticeable. So as soon as you lift, in next moment, you blink your eye and you will see that all the gas is spread in the entire box. Bhandari ji, can I move to the next slide?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
आपने आपने सब नोट कर लिया?
हाँ, sir.
Is there anybody who has who is still writing? Then I will wait. Otherwise, I'll go to the next slide. So I'm assuming everybody has copied it. Okay. Now, this is a random walk problem. So what we are assuming, it's also called drunkard's random walk, but we are restricting it to one dimension. So you have a drunkard who is walking in a straight line, okay? But because he is drunk, he may take few steps forward and few steps backward randomly. You don't know which step will go forward and which step will go backward. Okay, so we assume that each step size is of length L. So if he makes n steps, some of this will go forward, some of this would have been backward. So number of forward steps minus number of backward steps times L will be his net displacement. So here what you see as M is actually the net number of steps in one direction. So you can say it is number of forward steps minus number of backward steps. Each step is of size of length L. If we just keep on counting number of steps, that's good enough because L you can put in any time later on. So I repeat, it's a random walk problem. Randomly, the step would be forward or backward. Okay, in some simple cases, you can think that probability P and Q are same, which I will tell you when you do this. But otherwise, you can assume that there would be a greater probability to go in forward direction than in backward, especially drunkard who is walking probably is less likely to go backward, and therefore he'll take few steps forward, few steps backward, but he'll have more number of steps forward. So his net movement will be in forward direction. So that will be represented as M times L, what you see here on the screen, M times L. Okay, so we take, let's say, N1 steps forward, N2 steps backward. So M is equal to N1 minus N. The number of steps taken in forward direction would have probability P. Number of steps taken in backward direction, each one would have probability Q. Obviously, there are only two possibilities in one dimension. So your P plus Q is equal to 1. Total probability is 1. So either he goes forward or he comes backward. There is no other possibility. Okay. And the net displacement is N1 minus N2. So that the total number of steps you have N is N1 plus N2, and the net number of steps, since M is N1 minus N2, and you put N2 is equal to capital N minus N1, you will get a net number of steps 2N1 minus capital N, or you invert the relations, then your N1 is N plus M by 2, or N2 is N minus M by 2. Now, total probability is 1. If I raise it to power 1, I can expand it in a binomial series, which you see here. This term here, bracket, is nothing but NCR. Okay. Microsoft equation editor didn't give me a way of writing NCR, so I have written it this way. This is also a valid symbol mathematically for NCR. So R could be anywhere from 0 to n. P raised to R, Q raised to n minus R. So in this case, you're talking about, suppose if I take R equal to 0, then P raised to 0, Q raised to capital N, which means 0 steps forward, all n steps backward. If I take R equal to 2, then 2 steps forward, n minus 2 steps backward. Okay, what you are talking, each term you are talking uh, represents a probability that R steps are taken forward and n minus R steps are taken backward. And this probability, instead of R, if I write N1, would be I mean, of course, if you had written here NCR, it would be n factorial upon R factorial, n minus R factorial. So instead of R and n minus R, we have n1 and n2. So n factorial upon n1 factorial, n2 factorial, p raised to n1, q raised to n2, n1 steps forward, n2 steps backward. So if I take that as my probability distribution, Wn1 as a probability distribution, then average of any function f of u, okay, in statistics is defined as summation of pu fu upon summation of u. This total probability is normally 1. If it is not 1, then you are dividing by any way, so you are normalizing the distribution. And then this is called variance of value of u. It's given by u minus u bar. U bar is the average of u whole square, which if you open it, you will find that it turns out to be u square bar minus u bar square. When just look at it, first term will be u square, second term will be minus 2u bar, and third term will be plus u bar square. So remember, if I take average of this, first term will be u square bar. Now second term was minus 2u bar, and if I take average, the u also will be taken average of. So it will become minus 2u bar square. And then last term is plus u bar square. So you are left with one excess minus u bar square. You can go through the maths yourself. Okay, I should have had a bar here on top of this. Entire u minus u bar whole square should be under the bar. So if you write, please make sure that you do that. I'm sorry. Okay, so we were here. Is everybody done writing this?
Yes, sir.
Shall I move forward? Is there anybody who is still copying? Then I will wait for some time. Okay, so I'm assuming that everybody has copied it. All right. So with the formula which was written, right? See except for the last term here in the bracket, rest is my probability distribution. And please know the total probability is 1. We already saw that because we started with p plus q raised to n. So that p plus q is 1. So total is 1 anyway. Uh, 1 minute. So except for n1, what I have is the probability function. So if there was no n1 here, the summation would be 1 anyway. But if I put n1, which means I am finding average of n1, that is n1 bar. So n1 bar is average number of steps taken in forward direction. What is meaning of average number of steps in forward direction? 12. the same drunkard, same probability functions, everything same. And he does every day same walk, okay, same number of steps. And then you observe. Then on some day he would have made these many steps forward. In some day he would have made that many steps forward. Of course, uh, eventually he will reach home. So we will not bother about that. But we will say, okay, let me count. Let's say 20 steps. In those 20 steps, how many he takes forward and how many he takes backward. So every day you just observe his first 20 steps. Okay. And then you take the average of all the number of steps out of 20 taken in forward direction. That would be your N1 bar. That is, of course, experimentally if you are measuring. Theoretically, formula is in front of you on the screen. Now we want to evaluate this summation, the average number of steps in forward direction. So I am giving you one formula. It says if I have n1 times p raised to n1, I can write this as p times derivative of p raised to n1 with respect to p. If you take this derivative, you will get n1 times p raised to n1 minus 1, and you multiply by one more p. So it will become n1 times p raised to n1. So wherever I have n1 here, you see the n1 and p raised to n1, we can write it as p times derivative of p raised to n1. And we will assume p and q are independent, which means once I substitute this formula for derivative, I can very easily move uh, p times dou by dou p outside the summation without much problem. So if I move p, because summation does not depend on p. So p times dou by dou p can be shifted outside the summation sign. And therefore, what we will have will be summation of this. Now this probability we know is p plus q raised to n. So p times dou by dou p of p plus q raised to n. It does not operate on q. So it will give you n times. So there is already a p. Then you have n times p plus q raised to n minus 1. Now you say, look, p plus q is 1. So I substitute p plus q as 1. That term is gone and I'm left with n times p. Now that's very natural. If I tell you that probability of taking step in the forward direction is half, 50% chance, and probability that it takes a step in backward direction is 50%. Then out of 20 steps, he will anyway take 20 steps forward and take steps backward. So total number of steps times the probability of taking step in the forward direction will give you average number of steps in forward direction. If I had told you that forward step probability is 0.7, then out of 20, he would have taken 14 steps forward and 6 steps backward. And similarly, if you want to calculate, then N2 will be N times Q. And obviously, you can see if you add N1 bar plus N2 bar, you should get N. You will get N because P plus Q is 1. Now, what is the average number of steps he has moved in one direction? Then obviously, that's N1 bar minus N2 bar. And that would be N times P minus Q. So if P was equal to Q, obviously you don't expect any forward movement because half of the number of steps will be in forward direction, half in the backward direction. The net displacement would be 0. But if P was 0.7 and Q was 0.3, the difference is 0.4. So 40% of the total number of steps would be his forward advancement. So if I take 20 steps, he would have moved 14 steps forward, 6 steps backward. Resultant is 8 steps net displacement in forward direction. Are these mathematics troubling any of you, or this is okay and you can understand?
सर सेकंड लाइन एक बार फिर से एक्सप्लेन कर दोगे?
सेकंड लाइन,
या
ये लाइन ना जो मैं दिखा रहा हूँ,
हाँ
ठीक है ना? तो तुम ये राइट हैंड साइड निकालो. टेक derivative of p raised to n1 with respect to p. See what will you get. Derivative, you know how to do differentiation.
yes sir.
Please differentiate p raised to n1 with respect to p. What do you get?
N1 p raised to N1 minus 1.
And there is also one p remaining.
Yes. So p raised to N1.
Yeah. So you will get n1 times p raised to n1.
Yes.
Fair enough?
Okay.
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 Now suppose if I had 40 if I had 40 particles and I'm talking 15 particles, n1 equal to 50. So this will be 40 factorial, 15 factorial, 40 minus 15, which is 25 factorial. So that 40C15, something which I showed you in one of the earlier slides. So that's how you calculate. Is there anybody else who has any doubt with this? Please speak it up. Otherwise, you would be lost. Uh, uh, Things are going to be more abstract than this, and therefore you must make sure that you understand what I'm talking, because many places will keep on quoting this result. So I assume that this maths is understandable to everybody.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How about girls? Let's say Priyanka.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Are you able to understand what?
Yeah, somewhat. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Huh.
Madam, please call me after 12 o'clock. Priyanka, have you understood so far whatever we are discussing?
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay. Tell me what is not somewhat, means where is your difficulty?
Um, in this equation, therefore
Which,
n1 bar is equal to p third.
so correct. That's what I'm saying. You see, we had this n1 here. Look at the first equation. We have this n1 here, and we have p raised to n1 here. So I'm saying this n1 times p raised to n1, we can write as p times dou by dou p of p raised to n1. So in my first equation, I substitute n1 times p raised to n1 as p times dou by dou p of p raised to n1.
Yes.
That part you understand?
Yes.
Now, my summation is with respect to n1 and not with respect to p, which means this operation of p times dou by dou p can be moved outside the summation sign.
Oh, yes. Huh.
So once I move this, inside I'm left with only p raised to n1.
Okay. I got it.
And this summation, yes, this summation is p plus q raised to n. So then
Okay.
everything should be okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Very good. So I'm moving to the next slide. You are all welcome to interrupt and ask me if you have difficulty. Salunke, is he present?
Yes, sir.
Salunke present? Is this clear so far?
Yes, sir. Present too.
Naeem,
Yes, sir.
whatever is discussed, is it clear so far? Or you have a doubt?
हाँ सर. नहीं सर, लास्ट
क्लियर में
नंबर
आ
का है
सा
ना,
है?
उसमें तो कैलकुलेशन चेक कर रहा था. हाँ, उसमें ही चेक कर रहा था,
हाँ,
कैलकुलेट करके हो गया, उसमें डाउट था वो.
हो गया ना? It's fine so far.
हाँ सर.
There is a limitation, so you will have to be little bit more accommodative with this being far away and might not being able to write in front of you on board. So थोड़ा limitation रहेगा, but if you can work with me, then it will be fine. Okay. Now, this term delta n1 square is called fluctuation. Okay, you remember I showed you the formula in one of the earlier slides, delta n1 whole square. I said forgot to put a bar on top of it. So if I put that bar, it's n1 square bar minus n1 bar square. Right? Now n1 square, you remember what was n1 bar? N1 bar had P dou by dou P once. So if I take n1 square, it will be P dou by dou P 2 times. You would agree with this?
Yes, sir.
If I
Yes,
take
sir.
n1 square, good. I'm glad. If I have n1 square, it can be considered average value of n1 square. So n1 square times P raised to n1 can be thought of as P times dou by dou P. Now you see, this is different from P square times second derivative. So every time you take differentiation, you multiply by P. Then second time you take differentiation and then multiply by P. The order is not commutative. मतलब आप P square times दो डेरिवेटिव पहले ले लो और फिर P square से मल्टीप्लाई करो, वो नहीं चलेगा. Is this point clear?
Yes, sir.
हाँ, so n1 square times P raised to n1 के लिए मुझे P times dou by dou P दो बार ऑपरेट करना है. P times dou by dou P operated twice is different from P square times dou 2 by dou P2, second derivative. They are different. Okay. So P plus Q raised to N और N1 bar हमने already evaluate कर दिया है. That was NP. So N1 bar square will be N square P square. Right. And then if you take this P plus Q raised to N and you operate it twice, okay, that N1 bar square, it will be N1 bar square plus NPQ. आप दो बार डिफरेंशिएट करके देख लीजिए. Okay, first differentiation will give you n times P plus Q raised to N minus 1. Then you multiply by P. Then you take differentiation again. Please do that and convince yourself it will be N1 square plus NPQ, out of which this N1 square bar, N1 bar square and N1 bar square will cancel out and delta N1 square will become NPQ. Okay? Number of steps, probability of forward movement, Q is probability of backward movement. So your fluctuation around equilibrium is this square root of this delta n1 square. Okay. तो इसीलिए उसको हमने यहाँ पे स्टार लगाया है. I could easily write square root of delta n1 square bar, but उसके लिए short notation है delta star n1 and I divide by n1 bar. Then square root of this is root npq. N1 bar is np. So I will get 1 by square root of n times square root of q by p. Okay. So this is variation, okay, around the average value here. How much it fluctuates. We have taken average of this fluctuation around the average value. So this is the average of fluctuation around the average value divided by the average value. So you get 1 by root n cube upon p under the square root. Now let's, for sake of simplicity, say q and p both are half. Then root q by p is gone, which means this number varies as 1 upon square root of n. If you have seen fluctuation earlier in case of n equal to 4 and n equal to 40, you can see if I take n equal to 4, this number will be half. But if I take n equal to 40, this number will be 1 by root 6. And if I take n equal to 400, this number will be 1 by 20. All right. And if I take 40,000, it will be 1 by 200, which means as my number of particles or number of steps in this case becomes large, fluctuation from its average value is negligible. Okay. As n becomes very large, 1 by root n becomes very small. So in small number of steps, there would be too many fluctuations. But if the number of steps are very small, very large, won't have much fluctuation around mean value. To understand this, let me give you another problem. which is exactly same as what we are discussing at the point at this moment. For example, suppose you are tossing a coin. So you toss a coin, your result could be head or tail. This is exactly like when the drunkard takes a step, he takes either forward or backward. Either it's a head or it's a tail. Okay. In this case, of course, P and Q both are same, uh, unless it is that Amitabh Bachchan's coin in Sholay film. Uh, but for an unbiased coin, on one side you have head, other side you have tail. So P and Q both are half. If I toss this coin two times, on an average, I expect one head and one tail. Is this what happens? No. Okay. You can get both of them head, or you can get both of them tail also. Which one will, even if there is one, it could be first head and then tail, or first tail and then head, which means there is likely to be fluctuations. You can imagine that you can't predict this, what will happen in case of two coins. But if I toss 100 times, or I toss 100 coins, I'm sure all of you would say that yes, we expect by and large there will be 50 heads and 50 tail. This is the average we expect, but in principle it can vary between, let's say, 40 and 60. Very rarely I would have numbers going beyond 40 and 60 for number of heads and number of tails. Uh, and suppose if I make the number of trials from 100 to 1000 or 10,000, then you are definitely sure that uh, it would still be 10 coins plus or minus the average value. So where it was 100, it was 50 plus or minus 10. When I go to 1000, it will be 500 plus minus 10. And if I go to 10,000, it will be 5000 plus minus 10. So with respect to the average value, the variation has become too small, which means most of the time your molecules will remain distributed. When you are talking about gas molecule, the head and tail, left and right of a box, or a drunkard walking forward or backward, they are all equivalent situations. Okay. Particle to be on left, probability is P. To be on right, probability is Q. Head, probability is P. Tail, probability is Q. Forward step by a drunkard, probability is P. Backward step, probability is Q. They are all equivalent cases. P plus Q in all these three is 1. And therefore, same calculation applies to all of them. So I hope now you understand when I say fluctuation will be very, very small compared to average value when your n is very large. We have shown it mathematically, and with the example of tossing the coin, you can actually understand that yes, it's most likely what is being talked about. Up to this point, does anybody have any issue or anything which is not clear? Let me check. Is Mr. Bandari there?
Yes, sir.
Whatever we have talked about fluctuations, have you understood so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you agree that fluctuation will be very, very small when I take my number of cases, number of trials? See, in case of coins, number of trials. In case of drunkard, total number of steps. In
Yes.
case of gas chamber, divided into two half, number of gas molecules. Okay. So the
Hmm.
fluctuation from the average distribution will be very, very small if your number of molecule becomes large. We did see this in case of 4 and 40, but as the number increases, this fluctuation tends to be almost negligible. Okay, this equation we have already talked about. So the average number of steps taken in forward direction here, which will be 2n1 bar minus capital N. You remember we have taken m equal to 2n1 minus capital N. So that will become n times 2p minus 1, or of course you can write it as p minus q also. So that the deviation from average value is turning out to be 2 times n1 minus n1 bar, which is 2 times delta N1. We would call this as delta M1. Remember, this is straightforward difference. There it was when I said delta star N1, there I have taken delta N1 square bar and then taken square root of that. So there is a difference between delta N1 and delta star N1. There it was the average of squares and then taken square root. Here it is directly the difference with respect to the average value. So variation in advancement for a drunkard in forward direction, in this case, is 2 times delta N1. Whatever is your delta N1, whatever is the possibility of variation, the number of step advance in forward is double. Fluctuation is double, of course, variation is double. So if you delta n1 square, that's 4 times delta n1 whole square, and this number turns out to be 4 npq, which is of course, if you take p and q both half, then this number is nothing but n. And similarly, you can see that this fluctuation will also be going as 1 upon root n. Of course, please do not substitute p and q equal to half in this case, then you will have a problem here in denominator. Okay, but the point is the fluctuations with respect to net advancement or even in the number of steps in forward or backward direction all goes as 1 over square root of n. If you have copied this down, then I would go over to the next slide. Hello.
Copied, sir.
Correct.
So I am, yeah, since one person answering does not mean others agree with, but since nobody has raised objection, I'm assuming everybody is along the line and have copied it down. So I'm going to the next slide. Yes, so we go back to this, and you can see that this fluctuation here, and I can assure you that if I take n, much larger than this n, whatever it's plotted for, these fluctuations would look much, much smaller than what it appears in this graph. So as n increases, this zigzag with respect to n, of course. If n becomes very large on the same scale, this fluctuation will look very tiny. Now I have plotted this graph myself. You can do this. You can try this plotting on Excel. So I have n equal to 10 and n equal to 100, and I have plotted this probability distribution. You understand what I'm saying? It's a plot of your probability distribution, n factorial divided by small n factorial or n minus n factorial, which is like n1 factorial, n2 factorial. Sum is capital N. So for n equal to capital 10, that's what my graph looks like, and n equal to 100, that's what it looks like. Now, what is the crucial difference to be seen here? Look at n equal to 10, and you see the probability, it's maximum for n equal to 5. But as you go away from n equal to 5, you see 4 and 6, 3 and 7, 2 and 8, they are not negligibly small here. Okay, even n equal to 0 and n equal to 10, can you see a small bar here? Very small, tiny one here, blue line you can see. But if you look at n equal to 100, those lines are visible only up to, if I look the screen very carefully, my own screen, maybe 24, 23, or on the other side somewhere around 75, 76. Okay, they still show as very small dots. But as I go closer to 100 or close to 0, there is hardly anything visible. Which means with respect to the half-half distribution, 50-50 distribution probability, the probability of going to the extreme cases is very, very small. So if I start with a gas in a box, the probability that all the gas molecules will go onto the left half, or many of them will go onto the left half, very few on the right half, or the other way, is it's very, very small, very, very tiny compared to half of them on the left half, other half on the right half. Okay, few fluctuations here and there is possible, but remember, you are not dealing with n100. When you take gas inside a box at a normal human scale, you are dealing with Avogadro's number of gas molecules. So your number n is 10 raised to 23. So beyond half distribution, of course, few molecules here and there would also almost qualify as half of them. All the other probabilities are very small. Now, this is the case when you have half of the box on one side, the other half of the other side. Suppose I make one size of the box smaller and smaller. So let's say 1/10 of the box on left and 9/10 on the right, which means now my probability P will be 0.1 and probability Q will be 0.9. So on an average, we expect n times P, 1/10 of the gas molecules on the left half, 9/10 on the right half. If I tell you what is the probability that all the gas molecule will go onto the left half, then you'll say, sir, that's going to be very, very small. Does this give you a clue to the problem we posed last time? Remember the problem we posed last time? That I open a perfume bottle in a room and the perfume spreads in the entire room. What is the chance that all the perfume will go back into the bottle? Now you can answer the question in terms of the size of the bottle and size of the room. Your probability will be much smaller than even 1/10. P will be much smaller than 1/10. Q will be much close to 1. And therefore, if I take all the molecules going back into the perfume bottle, that's going to be extremely astronomically small number. When I'm saying astronomically small, means the other will be astronomically large number. So very, very unlikely that that kind of distribution you will be able to see. For more information about our activity and videos, you can visit our website, infinitelearning.org. I would also request you to subscribe our YouTube channel, Dr. Modi's Infinite Learning, if you are interested, so that you can get the information about new videos which are being posted.